Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something really complex, often, well, pretty misunderstood actually, the whole area of race and racism. Our mission really is to pull out the key stuff from this compelling article by Luis Valerio P. Trindade. It's titled, Race Doesn't Exist, Racism Does. Quite a statement, right? And the article, it kicks off by noting how much we hear about racism, especially in Italy with migrants apparently. And that can spark some really intense reactions. But here's the thing. The article suggests, before we really get into racism, we kind of need to understand race itself. They're just so deeply linked. And what's really surprising, as the source shows, is how the idea of race, well, how recently it actually evolved.
Exactly. And it's not just, a simple definition we're talking about. This whole issue of race, it's been argued over, debated intensely for ages in academia, across humanities, social sciences.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Oh, absolutely. Anything but simple. So let's dive right into the core scientific view today, which the article flags up. Race. It's not some, fixed biological thing. It's actually a social construct, which means, basically, that human races, biologically speaking, they just don't exist. And this idea of a pure race, definitely not a thing.
Right. No biological basis.
But getting to this understanding, well, it wasn't a straight line at all. And this is where it gets really interesting. The idea of race, as we often think of it, biologically, it's surprisingly modern. The article says it only really took hold between the late 18th and mid-19th centuries.
Yeah, that recent.
During that time, you had these influential thinkers, people like Linnaeus, the Swede, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach, a German anthropologist, Arthur de Gobineau from France. They were really pushing this concept of biological race. And their argument, which is pretty disturbing, was that everyone in a so-called racial minority had the same inferior traits. And these traits, they claimed, were passed down biologically.
Yeah.
Unchangeable.
Fixed, yeah.
And crucially, they argued that white-skinned people, specifically Anglo-Saxons, as they put it, basically their ideal white European, were biologically superior.
It's quite something, isn't it? How science or pseudoscience was used there. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this way of thinking, it got labeled scientific racism and also social Darwinism, which, by the way, is a terrible misapplication of Darwin's actual work.
Right, Darwin was talking about evolution within species, not some kind of human hierarchy.
Exactly. And our source really stresses this wasn't just about, noticing differences. It had a much, much darker function. It was fundamentally used to justify massive inequalities.
Like what, specifically?
Well, the enslavement of African people, for one. Denying basic human rights, just general marginalization. To do that, you first had to racialize groups, define them as a distinct inferior race. That became the twisted justification for treating people horribly and, crushing their chances in life.
Wow. Okay, so thankfully, this biological idea didn't just stand there. The article points to a huge turning point in sort of taking it apart. This happened in July 1950. A really important statement came out, signed by researchers from lots of different countries. It was called Fallacies of Racism Exposed, published in the UNESCO Courier.
A major moment.
It really was. And think about it, 1950. These scientists had to formally declare some basic truths. The declaration laid out findings that directly attacked those racist beliefs.
What were some of the key points?
Well, for instance, they stated clearly, there's zero evidence that human groups differ in innate mental traits, things like intelligence or temperament. In fact, mental abilities are pretty much the same across all ethnic groups.
Okay.
And they said, look, history and sociology show genetic differences aren't the drivers of social and cultural differences.
That's crucial.
Absolutely. Plus, they debunked the myth about racial mixing, said it doesn't cause negative biological results, any negative social outcomes, purely down to social factors, prejudice, basically.
Right, the problems were social, not biological.
Exactly. And the core message was, look, all humans can learn to live together, understand give and take, respect rules, our biological differences, irrelevant for how we organize society or morals or communication.
That 1950 declaration, it really stands out, doesn't it? It was such an important collective step, a genuine turning point in dismantling that biological race idea. And as a result, in fighting racism itself, its influence was, massive.
Definitely sounds like it.
And that work of deconstruction, it didn't stop there. It's been reinforced since. Take 2008, for example. You had the renowned Italian scientist Rita Levi-Montalcini.
The Nobel Prize winner, right?
That's her. Nobel for medicine. She signed a declaration marking 70 years since Italy's fascist racial laws, and her words were incredibly powerful. I think it's worth quoting. She said, "Human races do not exist. The existence of human races is an abstraction resulting from a misinterpretation of small physical differences between people, perceived by our senses, mistakenly associated with psychological differences, and interpreted on the basis of age-old prejudices."
Wow. An abstraction. Misinterpretation. Age-old prejudices. That really cuts through it.
It does.
Which brings us to, well, a really puzzling question, doesn't it? If the science is so overwhelming, so clear that human races aren't real in a biological sense, why on earth does the word race still hang around in society? And, tragically, why does racism persist right alongside it?
That's the core dilemma, really.
And maybe we should clarify something here, too, following the article. Race and ethnicity. People sometimes use them like they're the same thing, but they're not, are they?
No, they're distinct concepts.
The article defines ethnicity as more about a shared cultural background, history, maybe ancestry, language, religion, things that give a group a distinct social identity.
Exactly. Culture, history, shared identity, that's ethnicity. But going back to why race persists, what's fascinating here, kind of a paradox, is the pragmatic reason.
Pragmatic. How so?
Well, the source notes that because we don't really have a better, universally agreed upon term, race, or sometimes ethnicity, gets used practically, not to reinforce the old biology, but the opposite. It's used to reveal and highlight inequalities.
I see. Like in data collection.
Precisely. Social inequalities, economic ones, health disparities, gaps in education access. Using these categories helps support discussions, helps design public policies to actually fight racism and its effects.
So using the term to dismantle the problems it historically created.
In a way, yes. It's a very deliberate, pragmatic choice in many contexts, and you see this playing out differently in official statistics around the world.
Oh, yeah. Like where?
Okay, so Brazil, for example. Their main statistics body, the IBGE, still uses the term race in the census.
Interesting.
Then you look at the U.S. The Census Bureau there tends to prefer using both race and ethnicity together, trying to capture more nuance, perhaps.
Okay, race and ethnicity combined.
And then the U.K. is different again. The Office for National Statistics over there, they use only ethnic groups. They seem to avoid the term race altogether in their official data.
Huh. So different approaches to the same basic problem.
Exactly. It shows there's still an ongoing process, a debate about the best way to categorize people, even when the goal is positive, like addressing inequality.
Right. So let's try and pull this all together. What's the main takeaway here? It seems like, even though race is still a word we use, maybe even see on forms, it's crucial, absolutely vital, that we know it can't mean what it used to mean. It shouldn't carry that old biological weight that fueled, scientific racism.
That awareness is key. The meaning has to be different now.
And it also sounds like no matter what term is used, race, ethnicity, ethnic group, collecting that demographic data is still incredibly important, right? For understanding what's actually happening in society, especially for groups facing vulnerability or discrimination.
Absolutely. Without the data, it's much harder to see the problems clearly, let alone fix them. Which brings us, I think, to a really important question for you, the listener, to think about.
Okay.
How do we actually navigate this? We know biological race isn't real, but the social concept of race and its incredibly damaging history means inequality linked to these categories is still very real. So we still have to look at how we categorize people, how we collect data, not just for the sake of labels, but as a tool. A tool to expose those existing inequalities and, crucially, to do something about them. The real challenge isn't just arguing about definitions anymore, is it? It's about tackling the actual real-world disparities that continue to impact so many lives because of these historical constructs. How do we best do that?